So, the bad news is I am out of caffeine and I'm running completely on my ADHD at this point. Good news is the internet has given me a ton of stuff to go through today. So, well, let's see what's going on. Okay. So, number one here, Microsoft to ban in San Francisco amid crime and destruction. The latest in a long line of companies ditching San Francisco for greener pastures. Microsoft has officially put their offices in the once booming city for sublet, what many are calling the tech Texodus. Companies like Microsoft can't rationalize staying in San Fran while the city falls apart at the seams. Do-do-do. Okay, so 34% of downtown San Francisco offices now sit completely empty. Microsoft doesn't find a company to end their 49,000 square foot space. That number may increase, and because nearly 80% of downtown San Francisco is made up of office space, that means about a third of the neighborhood is just empty buildings. There are essentially three reasons why all these buildings are moving out of San Fran: coronavirus, crime, and squalor of downtown. So, I have not been to San Fran in probably 2 years, but I can tell you when I was there, San Francisco used to be super, super fun to go visit. People were great, food was great, places were great, but it's just been hollowed out. I don't think that's all that exciting. The economy added 150,000 jobs in October as hiring slowed, report shows. Hiring slowed sharply in October as employers added 150,000 jobs, signaling that high interest rates and inflation may be taking a widening pull on payroll growth. Auto workers' strike also dampened employment gains last month as manufacturing lost 35,000 jobs. The employment rate rose from 3.8 to 3.9%, the Labor Department said on Friday, highest level since January 2022. Excuse me. Honestly, don't think that's all that worrisome, to be completely honest. I know, like, media is just trying to kick some news there, but we're going to save that one, actually. Actually, this one's a little bit more interesting to me anyway. The American public is not ready. Ex-honcho at Ford, GM, and Chrysler says hitting Biden's electric vehicle sales goal by 2030 is just not going to happen. Here's why he's unconvinced. Motors, government fuel economics rules. Okay, I don't think he's really... I hate reporters who do this. Actually, this one might be worth diving into a little bit further. Who is this guy? This is Bob Lutz. So, let me give you a brief cap on how the electrical grid system works. The grid system works in two ways. First, you have something that's called base load. Base load is the minimum amount of electricity that has to be running through our electrical grid for things to work. The reason why you have a minimum is because along all those power lines, and you guys have probably seen it when driving by those power poles, there's like boxes on the side of the power poles. There's magnets and things called step-ups and step-downs in a lot of those things. So what happens is that if electricity is not flowing through certain boxes, those magnets die and they have to be replaced. Okay? So then on top of the base load, you have a variable amount of electricity that goes up and down throughout the day. And the issue is there if you're producing too much electricity, the wires, those catch on fire. And those boxes, those will blow up. I've seen both happen. And so essentially what happens, at least on the primary grid system, if you don't have those working correctly all the time, it just doesn't work. And so they've gotten really good about making sure that it's absolutely perfect. But unfortunately, I think a lot of these guys, and I don't know if it's the media that just doesn't air it, or if the spokesperson on a lot of these guys are talking about it, just do not do a good job of talking about it in a way that makes sense. Like, as great as solar and windmills are awesome, I would love to see just a full transition. The battery and storage capacity has to be there. But when you're running power through a grid, so here's a good example. I'm going to use here is the ultimate show and tell. Okay, got the mouse. Okay, so running it from this end to this end requires electricity, right? Not a big surprise there. But all through here, all through the cord, electrons are running down a piece of metal, which means you have to be pushing electricity down this cord. Now, obviously this cord is pretty short, so it doesn't take a whole lot to push electricity down this cord. And it doesn't take a lot of electricity. But if you have a power grid system that you have to push hundreds of miles, then it takes a lot of power to push it down that line. And that's called resistance. But what makes it worse is that first you have to generate the electricity, push it into a battery, and so you lose power pushing it into the battery, and then when you extract it from the battery, you lose a lot of power there. So I don't think he's wrong that the grid system isn't ready for it. I think any engineer would tell you that. But explaining that to people in a clear way, good luck. And maybe it's just, we just assume everyone's dumb. I don't think so. I think if you have honest conversations with people, they actually respond fairly well to it. But maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know. Yeah. We don't have enough electricity generating infrastructure. Biden aims to make electric car buys up to 60% of all new vehicles by 2030 to reduce carbon emissions. It's like, this is kind of an interesting point. So, for example, like they're pushing these aggressive rules. New York and California have these aggressive rules, but the primary guy is Elon Musk, and California pushed him out of California. And you see how, politically, you see how people treat Elon Musk. It's, if you want him to fix a problem, you kind of got to make friends with the guy. Yeah, I just don't. I don't see it. Even in these circumstances, that's great that you power, 8 vehicles or 12 vehicles, whatever the amount is. I wonder how that would work if the entire parking lot was doing that. Because it goes back to how much energy you can push down a line. I honestly have no idea what's reasonable because I'm not an engineer, but every time I hear people talking about it, I just don't see a real solution there. Actually, there's another one in here I saw. Was it here? Here we go. This is what set off the trigger bell for me this morning. Collapse of the project shows again that wind power is not affordable. The renewable power fantasy is being blown apart by furious financial headwinds. Already this year, projects have tumbled on Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, and now Danish wind power giant has canceled 2 wind farms in New Jersey. Over and over, the litany causes the same: inflation, high interest rates that drive up capital costs, and severe kinks in the supply chain. Same problems are slamming proposed offshore wind projects in New York as developers make final decisions on whether to start building turbines or cut their losses before it gets worse. Seeing the wind cost increases threaten to make the projects unprofitable, these companies went hat in hand to the State Public Service Commission, asking for increases of 35 to 65% on the price of electricity they hope to generate. But the commission declined to dig deeper into pay rates while it's sending them away empty-handed. The 4 companies behind these prospective wind farms have all taken big hits to their balance sheets. Equinor has written its value down by $300 million. Ooh. Orsted took a sledgehammer to his accounts, wiping out a whopping $5.6 billion. All this chaos, a top BP executive to lament that offshore wind industry is fundamentally broken. Yeah, because that's what this all boils down to. What it all really boils down to, and I know I'm right about this one, so fight me if you dare. Society is ran solely based upon how much energy we can produce, and that is it is a requirement that we produce cheap electricity. The 2 best examples of this are Germany and France. So, because of the Cold War, France switched its energy usage to almost completely nuclear power. It was affordable. They made it work in their country, largely because at the time they were dependent on Russian and Middle Eastern oil, and for security reasons they switched it all over to nuclear power for a moment. Then, of course, you get the tree huggers come in and decide this isn't good for the environment. So they get rid of nuclear energy, and now guess what? Now they're dependent on Russian oil again, which I guess it's U.S. oil now. I'm not sure where they're getting their stuff from. But either case, they got dependent back on oil. The other one was Germany. Germany years ago pushed real hard into solar energy, but their issue was that during the summer they produced too much electricity, so the companies had to sell it to other countries for really cheap, and they couldn't run a profit. And then during the winter they couldn't get enough energy, and so they had brownouts all over the country. And now again, after that fell apart, they were dependent on Russian oil again. So I get that people want to knock profits in corporations, but the reality is you have to run things. Corporations run things the way they do because they want efficiency at the end of the day. And if you're not going to run things efficiently, they're gone. And so if you want to make the world a better place, those companies are going to do it a lot faster and a lot more effectively than everyone else, because the prices, if you're paying $100 for your energy or for your electricity, see how long you care about green energy when your bill goes up to $2,500 a month. Or you just have no power at all. That's why carbon emissions and global warming is kind of a first world scare, because you go to third world countries, they're worried about eating. They're not worried about, global warming. So it's a problem, but we've gotten so political about everything. It's a nightmare. Let's see. Oh, this automatically makes me mad. Gas prices are in a glacial decline. Average price of gasoline set at $3.45 per gallon on Tuesday. Okay. So I was driving around the country, and during the pandemic, I was driving through northern Texas. I wish I had taken a picture of this. Gas was less than $1 per gallon. And honestly, most of the world is still dependent on Middle Eastern oil. They built those rigs 50 years ago, and there's no way their costs have gone up that much. So gas is absolutely monopolized. And unfortunately, since we are terrified and for whatever reason won't drill a lot of the US, we end up paying these nightmare prices. And if every other source of energy is falling apart, yeah, does not play out well. But back to that, let's see what else we got going on. We'll save that. That'll be the fun one for last. Okay, now it's actually, this is actually really important. I think this is actually really, I was saying this the other day to someone. Okay. Gen Z could wave goodbye to resumes because most companies have turned to skill-based recruitment and find it more effective. Trying to summarize every job you've had and still just a two-page resume has been the bane of job hunters' existence. That's because new research shows that many companies are moving away from relying on traditional job application requirement. In fact, 3/4 of companies are now using skill-based assessments throughout the hiring process, which surveyed 3,000 employees and employers around the world. This is up from 56% last year. Skill-based hiring is more effective, the data shows. Oh, so this is actually really, really good to know. Because if you are looking to progress in your career or advance in your career, what's great about these merit-based hiring is that it turns a lot less into who you know and about your ability of what you know. And so it makes it a lot easier to move up in the world when you already know the skills that you need to have in order to get the job. And a lot of people have been screaming about this for a long time because back in the day, because everything was word of mouth, it was all about, who you knew. But also there's a lot of jobs. There used to be a lot more jobs that if you had a brain and some common sense, you could probably figure it out. But nowadays, because everything's becoming so much more technical, you can't just hire anyone into something like computer programming or marketing or into be like in the medical field. So because it's gotten a lot more technical, this actually gives you a huge advantage because you can go online now, learn the skills, get a certificate, and take a couple tests that prove that you know the skills, maybe put together a portfolio and send it off to someone, and they're going to hire you. I mean, if right now, if you don't know what you want to do, you should absolutely be studying skill sets like data security, computer programming. If you want to get in the medical field, you can go to CNAs or MAs or whatever it may be. I mean, one thing I'm all about is go find someone, go figure out what job you want, figure out how much it pays, then figure out who's going to teach you that skill set and just pay that person to teach you the skill. It's just like life hack. There's someone out there who knows how to do something, and if you pay them to teach you how to do it, they're super cool with it. Let's see what else. Lost my $4. Nah. H&R Block. This is funny. I really turn off ads. H&R Block and Intuit show the perils of living off the government. I don't even know if there's that much in this article. That's a great title. You know what? This guy is probably a master of clickbait, and I'm all in. I just got baited. Let's see. Yeah, I guess don't be poor. It sucks. I think it's just more about tax return stuff, which you guys don't want to look at, I promise. Okay. Actually, this is probably, this is for all you real estate investors out there who think they're going to get rich through HGTV. HGTV, fix and flip. Zillow's chief economists say short-term tactics like house flipping won't work anymore as home prices continue to rise. Use these 3 simple methods to build your real estate riches instead. Oh, I'm going to get Grant Cardone here. He's going to tell me about how I need to buy his $25 million property instead. Let's see. Olson told Business Insider she believes the property over for short-term real estate investors who rely on tactics like house flipping to make a quick buck. She blamed her bearish outlook on mortgage rates, which she expects to hover around 5.5 to 6% in the long run, and the fact that elevated house prices have kept home buyers out of the market. The data on home prices from real estate brokerage Redfin shows home prices are still rising, with the average of a home in the U.S. up 2% year over year in September. Yeah, so here's my take on it. I do not want to fix and flip homes. But that does not mean that there isn't a lot of money if you know what you're doing and you're good at what you do. And that's kind of the 2 keys to everything, is knowing what you're doing and being really good at it. So this is also going to be really dependent locally. So where I'm at right now, there's no house flipping going on. They're sitting vacant for sure. However, I have no idea what's going on in Florida or Texas or anywhere else. So here's the thing. You need to be an expert. If you're going to do house flipping or real estate investing, awesome. I've known a lot of people who've made a lot of money doing it, had very successful careers at doing it. You need to understand your market really, really well, especially with house flipping. And it's one of those things that you have to be the expert. I mean, understand, it's not like people treat investing in real estate like they treat investing in the S&P 500. The issue with that is that every company on the S&P 500 is ran by a CEO who likely has a very, very long track record of success in their industry. Okay? There really isn't a whole lot of places that you're going to run to real estate that you're going to get the returns that you can other places, because real estate relies on debt to make the returns. So if, for example, let's say I throw my money into an equity fund, that equity fund, if they're just using cash from their investors, they don't, first off, it's likely you're not going to get a lot of the tax benefits that you would if you're going to buy the property outright. Secondly, because you don't have that leverage, you just can't get the investment returns on it. It's math. So if you're going to do it, you have to become an expert. You can't be relying on other people's opinion about that stuff. So I grew up in real estate. Well, someone asked me why I don't do that. I'm like, it's not as exciting as what you think it is. Let's see. Opinion about stocks for Bridgewater. It's co-investment chief. Isn't Bridgewater I think. Yeah, Ray Dalio. Yeah, I think he's the founder. Yeah, Ray Dalio was a founder. He retired from it a couple years back. So I'm assuming this woman has probably been there for a while. These guys, Bridgewater, these people know what they're doing or they know what they're saying. And so she's probably not even probably. If I had to say, give a hard opinion, she's absolutely right. However, understand what's going on today and what's going on tomorrow, two very different things. And you need to stop pretending like yesterday is today or like today is going to be tomorrow, because that's not how life works. You got to adapt with times. See, I'm definitely a bit bearish on U.S. stocks, and especially don't like their valuation relative to the opportunities around the world. U.S. stocks are pricing in perfection because of what's happening as the U.S. has just outperformed the world for so long. It says the Fed will struggle to cut rates. Yeah. So the reason why that is the Fed's trying to get itself, we talked about this the other day, the Fed's trying to get back down to its 2% rate, but their struggle is that Biden's administration is spending money like no other. And so the Federal Reserve, so what's going on is because the federal government is spending so much money, it's driving the amount of money in the economy up, which is driving inflation. But then you've got the Fed, whose only tool to combat this inflation is to drive up interest rates, which is really painful because these interest rates primarily are going to affect real estate. And so when houses aren't being sold because the prices are so high, this tool, the interest rates, is not a very effective tool. In a normal market, yeah, there's some positives to it. But the federal government just spends money all the time. It's just hard to fix inflation. And you can tell because they're playing a lot of games with it recently, and that's part of it's just typical government, some of it's politics, but I don't want to get into that too much. But yeah, you see it, how they rate numbers and how they play the stupid games with it because they're trying to make it look good for their political party. That's the name of the game. In other words, I don't think companies are going to struggle that much because I don't expect growth to be a total disaster. They're not amazing. I think prospects are okay. The problem is it's relative in the price. Valuation already reflects that. So it's just much easier to get a downside surprise where in other parts of the world there's much weaker earnings expected. It's just not already valued, it's not already in the price. It's much easier to outperform. Okay. Nothing too crazy there. All right. Science news. First CRISPR. Okay. First CRISPR drug could be approved soon. For those of you who don't know, CRISPR is working on genetically on different procedures in order to change genetic code, which that would mean a cure for things like Down syndrome, autism, mental disability, anxiety, whole wide range of things could be solved if these guys get off the ground. So I'm super stoked about this. So FDA agency that regulates medication in the U.S. agreed on Tuesday that CRISPR drug for sickle cell disease is safe. So what sickle cell is it's a disease that your red blood cells, or they're supposed to be round, they actually can get misplaced, and so it becomes a sickle cell shape, which unfortunately doesn't carry oxygen very well. It can rupture when it's inside the body. There's a whole bunch of theories about how this was used to combat certain diseases in certain parts of the world. Sickle cell anemia is actually very common among people who have African descent. So yeah, cure for that, it's awesome. Globally, more than 7.7 million people live with sickle cell disease, which overwhelmingly impacts people of Africa or Caribbean descent. Sickle cell has a high mortality rate, especially among children. It is the 12th leading cause of death in kids under 5 globally. Sweet. Not worried about that. 2 super volcanoes. If you're worried about getting blown up by a volcano, don't live next to them. Simple. Facts of life, people. Facts of life. Anyway, all right. It's 5:30 Friday night. I think I'm gonna go out to eat tonight. It's been a great week for me, but I'm tired. So anyway, be safe out